Next on Special Report, voters stream to their polling places to decide the most expensive and highly contested midterm elections in history. With all independent forecasters predicting a Democratic takeover of the House and quite possibly the Senate as well, Republican hopes hinge on a massive turnout effort and a trend in some late polls in their direction. We'll get an early take from the exit polling, and we'll check in with our correspondents covering both House and Senate to find out what they're hearing. All that, plus Michael Barone and our famous panel coming up right now. Page A1, please. News election headquarters at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Polls are still open here in the East and across the country. We do have some information from exit polls about whether the much talked about late momentum for the Republicans reflects reality, and a snapshot, more importantly, of how voters feel about key issues. I'm joined now by my colleague Chris Wallace with an update. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Brett. We'll be sifting through those exit polls all night. Interviews with some 12,000 people across the nation as they leave the voting booths. All the polls have not yet closed in any state, and we should tell you right up front, deja vu all over again, that the National Election Poll reports some questions, as they put it, about the exit polls in 5 key states: Arizona, Maryland, Ohio, Rhode Island, and Virginia. We're going to give you what we know, but you should take it with a grain of salt. We do have some national numbers now on several of the key issues tonight, and let's put them up. First, we asked how people feel about President Bush's job performance. 41% approve, while 58% disapprove. That's in line with the latest national polls just before the election. Interestingly enough, by way of comparison, approval of Bill Clinton was at 44% during the big Republican sweep in 1994, when they picked up 52 House seats. Turning to Iraq, 37% of voters say the war in Iraq was extremely important to their vote for Congress today. Of those, 61% voted for the Democrat, 37% for the Republican. But, and this is even more of a surprise, more voters, more than on Iraq, 42% said corruption and scandal in government was extremely important to their vote today. And they broke just as strongly for the Democrats, 61% to 36%. Now, one of the big questions in this campaign is whether it turns out to be a referendum on national issues or hundreds of separate races on local issues. 33% of voters tell us local matters counted most, while 62% focused on national affairs. And was there any late momentum in the final days of this campaign? Well, 18% of voters, about 1 in 5, tell us they made up their minds over the final weekend. Of those late deciders, 57% went Democratic, while 39% voted Republican. We'll have key numbers all night about issues as well as breakdowns by age, race, and religion of how voters split today. And if the national exit poll is not enough, Fox News has been conducting its own exclusive telephone polls with 900 voters and likely voters in 7 key states where there are 11 hotly contested House races. We can tell you that as of now, according to our Fox News phone poll, in 6 of those 11 races, Democratic challengers appear in strong position. They're leading by at least 5 points, while Republican incumbents seem to be holding on in 3 districts. Now, coming up at 7 p.m., we'll have exit polls from Virginia's key Senate race between George Allen and Jeb Webb, and we'll also have numbers on a hotly contested Virginia congressional race, another indication of how the battle for the House is going. As the evening heats up, we'll be able to tell you why your candidate won or lost, and why the battle for control of Congress turned out the way it did. Brett?
Okay, Chris, we'll be checking with you regularly. Thank you. It has been the conventional wisdom for the past couple of weeks that Democrats could take control of the Senate, but not easily. A great deal will depend on how well each party gets out its base of support. Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron is standing by in our Washington Bureau with a look at where the Senate races stand at this hour. Carl?
And we'll be monitoring them minute to minute as we go through the night, Britt. In the 7 to 9 states that may determine the Senate majority, both parties are reporting strong turnout. One Republican did say today, though, that if this is a referendum on the president, it could be a GOP bloodbath. But if each race turns on the differences between the Republican and Democratic candidates, Republicans will run strong.
Democrats need 6 pickups for control, and both parties expect in Ohio, incumbent Republican Senator Mike DeWine will come up short against Democrat Sherrod Brown. And in Pennsylvania, incumbent Republican Rick Santorum will be unable to catch up to Democrat Bob Casey Jr. Democrats need to knock off 4 more. They're highly confident in Montana. Despite a last-minute surge by incumbent Republican Senator Conrad Burns, who was tainted by the Abramoff scandal, Democrat John Tester may have an edge because of the Democratic Party's work with Native American voters and the state's early voting program. This could be a Democratic pickup. Republicans are nervous about Rhode Island, too. Lincoln Chafee has surged in the polls, but Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. And Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse had the lead for the last few weeks. Turnout in Chafee's strongholds was high, but Republicans know Democrats may be on the verge of knocking off the Senate's most liberal Republican.
Thank you very much.
Both parties think Tennessee may stay Republican. A ballot initiative on gay marriage may also draw conservative opponents to the polls who could boost GOP turnout for Republican Bob Corker. He focused the race on his Democratic opponent, Harold Ford Jr.'s character in the last few weeks and forced the Democrat to play defense. Corker appears to have surged ahead. The GOP is worried about Virginia. George Allen's turnout effort got a late start this summer because he was forced into damage control for various verbal gaffes.
Everybody vote!
Turnout is high across the Old Dominion, but it's unclear if Allen's ground game can match Democratic voter intensity and the anti-war sentiments that Democrat Jim Webb's campaign has generated. The last Republican-held toss-up is Missouri. The show-me state still shows a tie, and there have been some minor voting problems. Republican Jim Talent and Democrat Claire McCaskill have come down to the wire in a dead heat, and it's still there. Turnout in both Republican and Democratic strongholds is described as heavy. Democrats face challenges in 2 states. New Jersey, where Democratic incumbent Bob Menendez is expected to fend off Republican Tom Kean, and Maryland, where Republican Michael Steele would pull off the year's biggest upset if he beats Democrat Ben Cardin.
And across the country, there have been all sorts of allegations of intimidation and voter fraud, but most of it has been pretty small-time stuff. Lawyers are all dispatched getting ready for recounts already. Republicans say when they compare the turnout effort in the precincts that they've been watching versus 2004, they're actually ahead of the game in the last presidential election. Democrats counter that when they talk about the precincts that they're looking at, they've got an almost equal advantage, Brett.
All right, Carl, just what we expected. Thanks very much. Democrats, of course, are far more optimistic about their chances of assuming the majority in the House and in the Senate. And congressional correspondent Major Garrett is standing by in Washington with a look at where the House races stand right now. Major?
Well, Britt, the battle for the House could lead to a historic turnover of power from Republicans to Democrats. As Election Day draws to a close, Republicans fear this prospect in ways they haven't since they gained power in 1994. Conversely, Democrats anticipate regaining power really for the first time since having lost it back to Newt Gingrich in that '94 historic election. But before we put the campaign for the House to bed, it's worth noting some of the more memorable races around the country, none more curious than the battle in Florida's 16th congressional district.
No, I punched Foley for Joe.
Joe Negron, the substitute Republican candidate trying to hold the House seat Mark Foley resigned from in disgrace, but to do it he had to vote for Foley since his name couldn't be removed from the ballot. In southeastern Indiana, freshman Republican Mike Sodrill tried to defy the pundits and win a rematch against Democrat Barron Hill. Hill lost by less than 1,500 votes and believes he can turn the tables on Sodrill in this anti-GOP year. Many House races defined by unease over Iraq. In Illinois' 6th District, Peter Roscom is trying to hold a GOP seat against a strong challenge from disabled Iraq war veteran and Democrat Tammy Duckworth. Democrats need to capture 15 seats to regain control of the House, and all day they predicted that and many, many more.
There are probably 26 to 30 that the Democrats are now leading in going into today's election. So my number is anywhere from 25 to 40 seats.
I think we could win as many as 30-plus seats gain in the House of Representatives.
One reason for Democratic confidence, the turn out the vote effort led by Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton's bid for re-election.
Well, I voted for change, except for me.
Top Democrats say Clinton's efforts in New York could lead Democrats to taking these 5 House Republican seats. Republicans won't concede that much terrain, but confirm big problems in turning out their vote and don't rule out losing all 5 seats. Republicans know they are playing defense nationwide. Another vulnerable seat, Clay Shaw, is in southeastern Florida, but the party won't play numbers games.
I think we're going to lose some seats in the House after gaining seats for 3 elections straight, but I don't think we're going to lose the majority in the House.
And while Republicans express some concern about turnout in House races, they expect it to be offset by higher than expected absentee voting.
The two parties are pretty close when it comes to turnout. It also shows, as I said, big advantages for Republican with absentee and early votes. So my general belief is to everybody involved, grab a cold one, grab some pretzels. It's going to be a long night.
Brit, that's the public expression of Republican officials, but behind the scenes there is real Republican anxiety. I can tell you the rumors are flying around Capitol Hill fast and furious. There's one rumor that Speaker Hastert's office has already warned House Republican offices to expect losses of up to 30 seats. The Speaker's office denies that and will not comment on whether Speaker Hastert, if in fact Republicans lose control of the House, will seek a position as minority leader. There are already other Republicans, Mike Pence of Indiana, who are very seriously thinking about running for that position if Republicans are blown out tonight and find themselves in minority status for the first time since 1994. Back to you in New York, Brit.
Okay, Major, thank you. Next on Special Report, President Bush urges Americans votes and urges Americans of all ages to do the same, except those who can't vote, of course. And he says he hopes for a Congress he can work with. That report coming up next.
When Susie and I retire, we'll be taking trips like this whenever we want. It's a good thing we've been planning.
At Pacific Life, giving you the right tools to help you meet your financial goals is what we're all about. As you look to the future, look to Pacific Life. Ask your financial professional about Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed.
No matter where people are going, we're all going in the same direction. The future. Something we're thinking about today. A good example? This ultra-clean diesel fuel we're producing in the U.S. It contains 97% less sulfur. And we can all benefit from that. I'm Chris Erickson, and I work for ExxonMobil.
They were really good, and they lived in the house. Wanted to change the color of him. It has legs, and I don't know what it is. And just worms and some bugs. But his head is so tiny.
Who would you give a Volvo to? Tell us at volvocars.us.
Lease a new 2007 Volvo XC90 3.2 front-wheel drive for $359 a month for 24 months.
Technology has made your morning easier. Why not your shave? The Philips Norelco Smart Touch XL is designed to shave more, with 3 shaving rings in each shaving head. And it stays on your neck, so even tricky hairs are cut. Simplicity is making every stroke count.
Entertainment Weekly asks, has this man made the funniest movie ever? Yes. The most talked about news story is now the most anticipated movie of the year.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not used to that, but that's fine.
Borat, rated R, now playing only in theaters.
It all comes down to this. As the votes roll in, only one team has the coverage you want, with insider analysis and reports state by state. It's political coverage defined. Tonight,
election night coverage right here on Fox News Channel.
Tonight at 7, it's special live coverage of You Decide 2006, hosted by Brit Hume. Then at 12, as the results roll in, Shepard Smith's live with continued coverage. Plus at 2, get the results from every race as our live election coverage continues.
President Bush, as much as anyone in the country, has to be hoping for a House and Senate that will support his agenda in the last 2 years of his administration. After voting in Texas this morning, the president is back at the White House. And that's where our chief White House correspondent, Brett Baer, is standing by. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Britt. Tonight, the president is in the White House residence watching returns with the First Lady and his chief political advisor, Karl Rove. We're told we will not see any video or pictures of them, and the White House is not expected to put out any statements tonight. Now, after raising about $200 million for Republican candidates, the president's election day started with a vote in Texas. Heading into the Crawford Firehouse, the president's polling place, he was asked if he would vote a straight Republican ticket.
Pretty well made up my mind what I'm going to do. Thanks for asking.
Afterwards, with an I voted sticker on his jacket, the president put aside his partisan jabs of recent days and urged all Americans to get to the polls.
No matter what your party affiliation or if you don't have a party affiliation, do your duty. Cast your ballot and let your voice be heard.
The president campaigned like he was on the ballot, racing through 15 cities in 11 days, wrapping up in Dallas Monday night.
We're closing strong because we're right on the issues.
The president's final 5 days on the trail showed stops in the reddest of red states to try to prevent a Democratic-controlled Congress. In Billings, Montana, for incumbent Senator Conrad Burns.
Democrats are going to tax whoever they can find. And we're not going to let them because we're going to put Conrad Burns back in the United States Senate.
In Elko, Nevada, for congressional candidate Dean Heller. 2 stops in Missouri trying to shore up incumbent Senator Jim Talent. The president repeatedly insisted his tax cuts have led to a strong and growing economy.
And this morning, we got more proof of that. The national unemployment rate has dropped to 4.4%.
In Lamar's, Iowa, for trailing Republican gubernatorial candidate Jim Nussle. In Greenlee, Colorado, for Congresswoman Marilyn Musgrave. In Grand Island, Nebraska, for congressional candidate Adrian Smith. In Topeka, Kansas, for Congressman Jim Ryan in a tight race. In Pensacola, Florida, for gubernatorial candidate Charlie Crist, who chose to campaign elsewhere. In Bentonville, Arkansas, for gubernatorial candidate and former Undersecretary of Homeland Security Asa Hutchinson. And finally in Dallas, Texas, for Governor Rick Perry.
But I want you to know, for the next 2.25 years, I'm going to sprint as hard as I can to make this country as great as it can be.
From Texas, the president returned to the White House to watch returns that will determine how tough his sprint will be. Senior aides say the president will be making some phone calls to victorious Republicans tonight, but they also point out if it is a long night, President Bush is historically early to bed, and he may go to sleep before knowing definitively what Congress will look like for the next 2 years. Britt?
Well, Brett, thanks. We'll be up here, though. Next on Special Report, we'll look at what went right for the voters today and where there was trouble at the polls. That report when we return.
You Decide 2006 is brought to you by NASDAQ, Life, and the companies that move it forward.
You may not realize it, but there's a source of renewable energy right in your neighborhood, and you're helping to power it. Today, Waste Management is using the resources at our disposal to create energy from waste. Enough green energy to power over 1 million homes. From everyday collection to environmental protection, think green, think Waste Management.
I'm Iris Stralk, and this is my story. I'm a homemaker. I've got 2 sets of twins. Our day can be, quite hectic. I hate when I get a cold. When the kids get a cold, it's fine. Mommy's there to take care of them. When I get a cold, no one takes care of me. My head is pounding and my sinuses flare up. Mommy needs a break. When I get a cold, I take a leave cold and sinus. It lasts all day, and for me, that's really important. When I'm well, it's hard. But when I'm sick, forget it. You definitely want something that works well, and a leave cold and sinus works for me.
Cast aside the tools of oppression known as silverware. Introducing Bennigan's Bar Bites. Evenings and late nights at the bar, our new Bar Bites menu items are just $3 each. Throw in our amazing drink specials, and you can't afford not to go out. With the new Bar Bites menu, freedom from hunger is at your fingertips at Bennigan's.
Fans, check out the NHL on Versus Monday and Tuesday nights.
By most accounts, most of today's voting has been trouble-free, but great numbers of voters are using new technology to cast their ballots. And though hanging chads may be a thing of the past, the course of true love and free elections ne'er run perfectly, at least not perfectly smoothly. Fox's Bill Hemmer joins me from Cleveland with a look at what went wrong and what went right. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Britt, good evening here from Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, Ohio. Ohio made history today. For the first time ever in a statewide election, everyone who went to the polling station today voted by way of machine. Now, it did not all go as planned throughout this entire election day today, an election that continues again for another hour and 10 minutes here in northern Ohio. However, Ohio voters are getting through it.
Americans moved their voting system to the 21st century today, many voting electronically for the first time.
Yes, it's all set up.
In 2002, federal law mandated a new election system. $3 billion, and now 4 years later, polling stations open with high-tech machines designed to streamline the process. From daybreak, it appeared some areas of the country would have a very long day. A computer glitch in Indiana kept people from voting in 75 precincts. Computer cards needed to activate machines were not properly programmed. Most issues appeared to be operator error. A court order in Indianapolis is now keeping polling stations there open an additional 2 hours and 40 minutes tonight.
I think we need to allow every voter that might not have been able to vote this morning a chance to go back after work and give them plenty of time.
Similar problems were encountered from New England to Tennessee, and the Republican National Committee claiming voting machines in New Jersey were pre-programmed to cast extra ballots for Democratic Senate candidate Bob Menendez. Ensuring the security of electronic voting is one of the major concerns in the new system. But critics complain the 4 years mandated by Congress to implement e-voting was too much, too soon.
That's too short a period of time for those machines to actually be created, much less have the regulatory standards created and vetted by scientists, or the security apparatus created, or the staffing.
Earlier in the day, some precincts across Ohio did experience problems, but in a unique program here in Cleveland, a computer program designed to monitor each polling station was tracking any issues that needed attention.
And the head of Cuyahoga County Election Board today says they had a few glitches in the morning, but by late morning, mid-afternoon, everyone in every precinct, all 576 precincts here in the county, were voting electronically. He says no one was on a paper ballot. Britt?
Bill, thanks very much. Along with the congressional candidates, voters in 36 states are choosing governors as well. And here again, Democrats say they're very hopeful tonight they will prevail and gain a majority of those offices. Correspondent Megan Kendall reports on the gubernatorial contest. Megan?
Hey there, Britt. Well, it's been a dozen years since the Democrats controlled a majority of the nation's state houses, but that could change tonight. Right now, the Democrats control 22 of the nation's 50 governorships, Republicans the other 28. The Democrats need 4 to win a majority. Most pundits say they'll get that and more. 10 seats are open in this election, meaning a governor is stepping down. 9 of those are GOP held, and 5 are considered likely turnovers to the Democrats, including Colorado, Arkansas, Ohio, New York, and Massachusetts. Nevada also has an open seat. Republican Jim Gibbons had been dominating over Democrat Dina Titus, but the race tightened significantly after a cocktail waitress alleged that Gibbons groped her in a parking garage, charges Gibbons denies and which do not appear to be supported by the relevant garage security tapes. Pundits say the other 2 open Republican seats, Alaska and Idaho, could also wind up with Democrats, although that is far from clear. But they believe the GOP will retain its hold on the Florida State House, where Governor Jeb Bush is stepping down due to term limits. That's also a tight race. The one seat being vacated by a Democratic governor, Iowa, could wind up with the Republicans. The Democrat, Chet Culver, is polling ahead, but Republican Jim Nussle is keeping the race very close. As for sitting governors, a few may lose their jobs tonight. On the Republican side, at least 3 are in danger, including Bob Ehrlich of Maryland and Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota. Both are popular GOP governors, but they govern blue states and face very strong candidates. Rhode Island's Republican Governor Don Carcieri is also facing potential ouster. The Democrats, too, could lose a few incumbents. Most vulnerable, Ted Kalingoski in Oregon and Jim Doyle in Wisconsin both are leading their opponents, but by slim, single-digit margins. Viewers may wonder why they should care about the governorships. They are important for several reasons. First of all, the next president could come from the nation's state houses. 4 of the last 5 presidents have. But a governor can also affect who wins the presidency. Experts say a popular governor can move his state's vote as many as 3 percentage points in favor of a candidate. And let's not forget about redistricting, where a state's congressional district lines are redrawn by state lawmakers. It happened in Texas in 2003 and resulted in Republicans picking up 5 seats in the U.S. Congress. Those efforts have to be approved by the governor, and clearly it can tip the national balance of power. Just a few things to keep in mind as the results come in tonight. Brit.
Megan, thank you very much. We'll be back to you often tonight. Thanks again. Saddam Hussein's former vice president, Ibrahim al-Duri, reportedly has ordered Ba'ath Party bosses in Iraq to end insurgent attacks. The Associated Press says al-Duri, who has been hiding since Saddam's government fell, issued the call after Saddam was convicted of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death on Sunday. Al-Duri's reported directive also comes at a time when the Shiite-led Iraqi government has agreed to legislation that would reinstate former Ba'athist officials to some positions of responsibility. Saddam himself today, at his other trial for crimes against the Kurds, also called for reconciliation. After 47 votes at the United Nations, Venezuela's Hugo Chavez has been forced to give up his quest for an open, rotating seat on the United Nations Security Council. Chavez has said his efforts were an attempt to end U.S. domination of the world body, but the struggle ended today after both Venezuela and U.S.-backed Guatemala dropped out. The diplomats voted overwhelmingly then for Panama to fill the Latin American seat, and then burst into applause when the results were announced. We're going to take a break here to give our sponsors a little time to talk to you. When we come back, though, a last-minute campaign ad in Georgia opens old wounds and stirs up old fears. Well, you hear this. That story is next on The Grapevine.
When your insurance is in sync, you can roll with anything, travelers.
For each of us, there's a moment of discovery. We turn a page, we raise a hand, and just then, in the flash of a synapse, we learn that life is elemental. And this knowledge changes everything. We look around and see the grandness of the scheme. Sodium bonding with chlorine, carbon bonding with oxygen, hydrogen bonding with oxygen. We see all things connected. We see life unfold. And in the dazzling brilliance of this knowledge, we may overlook the element not listed on the chart. Its importance so obvious, its presence is simply understood. The missing element is the human element. And when we add it to the equation, the chemistry changes. Every reaction is different. Potassium looks to bond with potential. Metals behave with hardened resolve. And hydrogen and oxygen form desire. The human element is the element of change. It gives us our footing to stand fearlessly and face the future. It is a way of seeing. It gives us a way of touching issues, ambitions, lives. The human element. Nothing is more fundamental. Nothing more elemental.
Entertainment Weekly asks, has this man made the funniest movie ever? Now, audiences across America answered yes.
King in the castle, king in the castle.
Peter Travers of Rolling Stone gives Borat 4 stars.
Hello, my name is Borat. Careful, he bites.
And Leonard Maltin says America will never be the same.
A woman has a right to choose who she has sex with.
What?
That's good, huh?
It's not good for me.
Borat, rated R. Now playing only in theaters.
Oh, Sharon, This stuff won't get rid of the mold in here.
Will it help you forget our address?
There's a better way to deal with your mold problem.
Can you pass me the brush?
Tirex, the mold killer.
Here's a radically simple suggestion from eLoan. You can lower your rising monthly payments by consolidating your debt with a home equity loan and paying one lower monthly rate. Just call 1-800-TRY-ELOAN or go to eLoan.com. eLoan, radically simple.
And now the most absorbing 2 minutes in television, the latest from the political grapevine. A radio ad for the chairman of the Fulton County Commission in Atlanta is using some heavy hitters to warn of dire consequences as Republican Lee Morris defeats Democrat John Eves. Georgia Congressman John Lewis says, quote, "You think fighting off dogs and water hoses in the 60s was bad?" Former Atlanta mayor and UN Ambassador Andrew Young says Republicans would, quote, "turn back the clock on equal rights." And the current Atlanta mayor, Shirley Franklin, says the work of Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders would be lost. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which has a reputation as pro-Democrat and left-leaning, has endorsed the Republican Morris, saying his political and professional experience give him the edge over Democrat Eves. Illinois Democratic Senator Barack Obama, who is African-American, of course, last week campaigned for Maryland Senate candidate Ben Cardin, who is white. Obama urged voters not to let race lead them to cast ballots for Cardin's African-American opponent, Republican Michael Steele. Said Obama, quote, "You don't vote for somebody because of what they look like." But on Sunday, Obama campaigned for Tennessee Senate candidate Harold Ford Jr., who is black. Obama urged congregations at 2 black churches to vote for Ford, saying, quote, "I'm feeling lonely in Washington." South Carolina Republican Governor Mark Sanford was able to see well enough to get to the polls today, but he couldn't get in. Sanford, who is running for a second term, burned his eyes under bright stage lights on Sunday. Today, he forgot his voter registration card and was turned away at his polling place. He later came back and voted. And 6th-term Ohio Republican Congressman Steve Chabot found out how seriously poll workers are taking the state's new voter ID law. When he had his driver's license rejected, his ID, because it had his business address on it. So Chabot went home and came back with a bank statement and a Social Security statement and was allowed to vote. Said as sheep as Chabot, "I guess this just shows that poll workers are really doing their job," end quote. And Richard Armitage, the man who leaked Valerie Plame's CIA status to the press and then let others take the blame for it in the press, is now saying that Democrats will win the House and perhaps the Senate, and he says approvingly this will mean increased oversight of the Bush administration. In a speech in Canberra, Australia, Armitage said, quote, "The message I think from the electorate is that fear doesn't work. You've got to go back to what is traditionally ours, to those things that made us important in the eyes of the world." And the former Deputy Secretary of State added that after 9/11, America was, quote, "exporting our anger and our fear," and that the U.S. needs to now export hope, opportunity, and inspiration. Richard Armitage. Beside the candidates for the House and Senate and local office, there are scores of ballot initiatives before voters today, and nearly a third of them were initiated by the voters themselves. Our chief Washington correspondent Jim Angle has a look at some of those questions.
Voters are not only choosing their policymakers today, in many states they'll have a chance to set policy themselves. 37 states have more than 200 initiatives on their ballots, and those that touch a nerve with voters can get them to the polls.
I think it can impact on turnout, and I think it gets the casual voters out who might not be inclined to vote in a federal election.
In 2004, pollsters believe a gay marriage issue on the ballot in Ohio helped win that state and get President Bush reelected by energizing conservative voters. There are 8 more ballot initiatives on gay marriage this year. Other social issues on the ballots include abortion. 2 states vote on whether parents must get 48 hours notice before their child can receive an abortion. In South Dakota, voters will decide whether to repeal a state law banning all abortions, except those to save the life of a mother. Another hot-button issue is stem cell research, which is on the ballot in Missouri.
I care deeply about stem cell research. In Missouri, you can elect Claire McCaskill, who shares my hope for cures.
Her opponent, Senator Jim Talent, supports stem cell research, but not Amendment 2 to the state constitution, which would protect stem cell research from any limitations from the legislature. It would ban human cloning, but it enshrines in the Constitution the right to clone embryos for research, which some regard as creating life in order to destroy it.
Amendment 2 claims it bans human cloning, but in the 2,000 words you won't read, it makes cloning a constitutional right. Don't be deceived.
There are also 12 states that will vote on whether to restrict eminent domain after the Supreme Court upheld the right of New London, Connecticut, to take over an individual's property for development in what is known as the Kelo case.
Important to a lot of people where they looked at that Kelo case and said, wait, you can take my house away from me? Yeah, I'm going to go vote for that.
5 states will also vote on whether to increase the minimum wage, and many will vote on higher taxes on tobacco with the proceeds to go into health care programs. And one totally unique issue in Arizona that would establish a $1 million prize to be given to a randomly selected voter from either the primary or the general election. So if civic duty or special ballot initiatives don't motivate you to vote, perhaps a turnout lottery will. So all in all, Brit, even as voters choose local and national officials today, they've identified a few issues as too important to leave to politicians. And on those, voters will tell legislators exactly what to do. Brit?
Okay, Jim, thank you. If there is anyone who knows the polls and the precincts in America better than Fox News contributor Michael Barone, we haven't met that person. He knows the history of where Democrats and Republicans have been, and he's here tonight to read the tea leaves and tell us where they may be headed. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Britt. Well, tonight we're going to be looking at a lot of House races, and the question of House control is definitely up for grabs. And we don't have exit polls in the polls, so one of the things I'm going to be looking at is the tabulated vote. And finding out how these embattled Republicans are doing compared to what they've done in the past. 9th District of Indiana, for example. That's one of 3 races that are seriously contested seats in Indiana where the polls close at 7 p.m. That's southeastern Indiana. Freshman Congressman Mike Sodrell is going up against the man he beat barely 2 years ago, Democrat Barone Hill. That's a race that Democrats have been hoping all year to win. President Bush is in that district for Mike Sodrell. That's going to be a closely contested race, and we're going to try to look at that county by county, looking at the turnout, looking at the percentages for the candidates. Kentucky 4. Right across the river, northern Kentucky, the suburbs of Cincinnati. It extends west to the suburbs of Louisville and east to the industrial center of Ashland on the Ohio River. That's an area of mixed heritage, with some counties there have been Democratic since the Civil War. You've got Republican-leaning northern Kentucky. Republican candidate there, Jeff Davis, another freshman Republican. He's facing Ken Lucas, a former congressman, who in fact beat him 4 years ago in 2002. That's a compound of different kinds of areas, and we're going to be taking a look at how they're doing there. And then at 8 o'clock, northeast Connecticut, the Connecticut 5th Congressional District. Here the embattled Republican is Nancy Johnson. She's been in the Congress for 24 years. She survived a tough challenge 10 years ago when there was a lot of backlash in the Northeast against Newt Gingrich. The campaign manager of her opponent of 10 years ago, Chris Murphy, now a state senator, is the Democrat running there. There have been a couple polls in the last 2 weeks of the campaign that have shown Chris Murphy ahead of Nancy Johnson. She's been running some tough commercials. A big question there, how's she going to do in the Farmington Valley? Those affluent suburban areas, Farmington, Simsbury, just west of the mountains, west of West Hartford. That's an area where she's voted strongly for her in the past, but at least in the sample of polls, one of those polls showed her trailing in the Farmington Valley. This would be bad news for Republicans and could cause her to lose her seat. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at in House races in the opening hours after the 7 and 8 p.m. polling close, and as the numbers come in during the day, or during the evening, I should say, and into the small hours of the night. Will Democrats be able to win those 15 seats that they need for a majority? Will they pile up a bigger majority than the 15 net gain that they're going to make? Those are questions we'll be examining district by district, county by county, and in New England city by town.
All right, Michael. Nobody does it better, as you've just shown. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you shortly. Next on Special Report, however, the Fox All-Stars will be here to talk about what the exit polls may be showing us so far, if anything. So stick around. We'll be right back.
last year, Norfolk Southern and its shipping partners took hundreds of thousands of freight loads off the highway. In fact, they've invested millions to convert even more traffic in the coming years. So it's easy to see how the economy won't be the only thing that benefits. Norfolk Southern, the future of transportation.
When you're smiling.
Printers and copiers so advanced, they're simple.
When you're smiling.
That's a reason to smile with Kyocera.
The whole world smiles with you.
Award-winning performance. Another reason to smile. Brilliant color. Low cost of ownership. And not just reliable, network reliable. New reasons everywhere you look. That's the power of people-friendly. Only from Kyocera.
The whole world smiles with you.
You can store all this at Public Storage and pay just $1 for the first month's rent. You can store all this at Public Storage and still pay just $1 for the first month's rent. You can even store all this at Public Storage and still pay just $1 for the first month's rent. Call 1-888-44-STORE now. Offer ends soon.
Rick Wilcoxon is a real Geico customer, not an actor. So to help tell a story, we hired an actor.
Originally, I switched to Geico to save money, but then I was in an accident.
Yeah, that's right. I was in an accident.
I got on the phone and called Geico.
Yeah. Hello. Hey, how's it going?
After a few days, I had my repair check. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I got the check. Got my car fixed. It's my birthday. Fixed my bumper. New taillights.
Geico. Real service, real savings.
It's my birthday.
The people in America want change. They're not happy with what's happening overseas in Iraq, in North Korea, in Afghanistan. They're not happy with what's happening at home as wages stay flat and the cost of tuition, prescription drugs, energy goes up, and they're demanding change.
Senator Schumer, who most observers think has done a very good job of running the Democrats' effort to regain control of the Senate, obviously believes that he is at least on the verge of doing that tonight, and he may well be right. This is the stage of the night when we who work at these news organizations that subscribe to the election night exit poll are able to begin to look at the results to see two things. One is why people say they voted as they did. And the other thing, of course, is the horse race questions, race by race, state by state, of how they voted. 2 years ago at this time, we were sitting here, and all of us believed we had understood from the exit polls that John Kerry had been elected President of the United States, and a number of other results that fell along those lines. Well, it turned out to be wrong, and it wasn't the first time. Now, 2 years later, we've been given to believe that the exit polling techniques, the oversampling of Democrats, the problems in the exit polls have been solved, it was hoped, and the new exit polls will be better. Well, they're out. We can't tell you about all of what's in them because polls are still open, but we have some thoughts here at this panel tonight about what the exit polls may or may not be able to tell us, and some thoughts on this from Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard, Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Mort Kondracki, executive editor of Roll Call, and my friend Juan Williams, senior correspondent of National Public Radio. All are Fox News contributors. Well, we have some exit poll data. We also have data from a Fox News Election Day poll, which is an ordinary garden variety telephone poll conducted the same as every pre-election day poll. So based on what first of all, how far do you think we can go in making any conclusions based on what we've seen so far of the exit poll numbers? Fred?
Well, I think we can conclude what we thought ahead of time, and that was it's going to be a good Democratic night. I think we conclude, though again, this exit poll is way out of whack. You know, races that were close shows one of the candidates, usually a Democrat, winning by 15 points, 20 points, when we know that's not true. The telephone poll is actually better. I think there are a couple other things that we can tell.
I mean, the Fox telephone poll.
It seems to be better. It's closer.
Does anybody disagree with this? Fred's thoughts about that a lot of these early numbers are out of whack?
Yeah, it depends on how it's weighted.
And we don't know.
I know, but weighting means that means when you adjust the results because you think your poll is wrong, right?
We don't know what the bias is and how much of a Democratic bias it is, but still, when you put it together with the phone poll, you think it's going to be a pretty good night. And one other thing,
of course, it being a pretty good, it was always going to be a good night for.
Yeah, it was always going to be a good night. You know, probably win the House and do pretty well in the Senate. The other thing is, what interested me was in the, which I don't know how this could get particularly slanted, but maybe it could, and that is how late deciders went. And they went sort of 3-2 for the Democratic candidates, which would lead one to believe that this rally of Republicans at the end that we certainly talked about for the last couple of days.
And which some polls showed.
Well, no, yeah, more
several
than one.
polls showed.
Yeah, three or four polls showed.
Yeah, look at this. As late deciders went almost 60-40 for the Democrats.
That we thought it was late deciders going for Republicans. As it turned out, maybe not.
Are you skeptical of that number?
Not as much as I am skeptical of the others.
All right.
I mean, we won't know, of course, which polls are out of whack until we see the final results.
Right.
It does seem that the exit polls skew Democratic. They did in 2004. They've done in prior races, actually.
In 2002, they did too.
And in 1992, I was on Air Force Two with Vice President Quayle, and the first wave of exit polls were Clinton defeating Bush by 12 or 13 points. He won by 5 points. So they can be off 6 or 7 points. I guess Republicans walk out of the polls, and they're surly people, you know, and they see some nice exit pollster, some young woman there, and they say, get lost, and the Democrat is so eager to share his views, you know. I don't know why it is. Republicans do seem to not like talking to exit pollsters quite as much as Democrats. I think that late decider number is consistent with the general sense that it's a Democratic year. People are unhappy with the president and with the war and with the Republican congressional leadership. You haven't been paying that much attention to politics. Probably if you're a late decider, you tune in late, you're likely to go. Right. That makes sense, 3-2 Democratic, I think.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the usual break on late undecideds is 2-1. The
for
standard conventional wisdom, this is 1.5 to 1. That would be more or less in line. The other point, you know, the surprise in the poll what had to do with corruption being the most important issue.
More important than Iraq.
Yeah, more important than Iraq. Well, you know, remember,
you believe that?
Just a minute. 2 years ago, it was moral values. Do you remember that?
Right.
And then when in the light of day, we saw that moral values was outstripped completely by foreign policy issues when you added Iraq and terrorism.
Together,
yeah. Yes, we don't know what the terrorism number is today. I suspect the same thing will happen.
Juan, your thoughts?
I mean, let me just say for the Fox News decision desk that they think they've weighted the poll properly this time after 2 miscues, and that they think they've got it right. And if you look at
no, wait. Fox does not independently weight the exit
No, but they think they think this consortium has now tried to correct what they've done.
And
so they have put added weight, more Democrats in to try to correct. So that's what they think.
I just want to defend the Fox decision desk. They are skeptical and have a lot of caution about this.
But I'm saying, they're trying to counterweight.
Yeah, but the important thing about this is what this means is normally when the polls start closing, we can look at if you look at a reliable exit poll, you can start to make calls on a bunch of races that were not particularly close. It's going to be harder for us to do that tonight because of this.
Right, exactly. Well, no, that's without a doubt. But I was going to say, if you look at something like the president's approval rating, which is 41% here, that's about what we've seen going into this throughout the year.
A little better than some polls. Right. All right, we got to take a break, but Juan will come back to you shortly. When we come back with our panel, we'll look at the projections of some of the famous prognosticators, and we'll see how the All-Stars line up with them. Stay tuned.
I thought we had to.
You Decide 2006 is brought to you by AARP. Don't vote until you know where the candidates stand on the issues. Visit don'tvote.com.
I'm handsome, I'm funny, I tell a good joke. I'll hug you, I'll kiss you, I don't even smoke. My wife is impeccable, my past quite respectable. Vote for me assuredly, but don't ask about Social Security. Come have some pie with me.
Don't fall for the song and dance. Vote the issues, not just the personality. See where the candidates stand at don'tvote.com.
As a kid, I used technology to help people do better. Today, Scottrade does the same for online investors. If you've been thinking about moving your account, this is the perfect time to come to Scottrade. With powerful trading tools and fast, accurate $7 trades, Scottrade gives you more for your money.
For 100 years, one book has helped people find things. But some people use a different book. Her book has less information, which causes problems. No other book has more complete ads and up-to-date listings than the AT&T Yellow Pages. So choose the book with AT&T on the cover. The new AT&T, your world delivered.
If it's proof that people want in order to believe my theory that Mercury Insurance is run by aliens from the planet Mercury, it's proof they'll get. Probably feeds directly back to their planet. The mothership. Hello, Mercurian overlords.
Call 888-4Mercury or visit mercurytheory.com.
A duck, a gecko, and a caveman were having lunch. Duck says, "Gecko, you have fantastic commercials." "No," the gecko replied, "the caveman has great commercials, but not as good as you two," the caveman said. Then someone chimed in, "What about Bob?" After a long silence, you hear, "Think about it. He's cocky, arrogant, and crude. The only thing going for him is great homes, good prices, and fantastic mortgages. Even helps people with bumps and bruises on credit. Hope he makes it. Bless his heart."
And we're back with our supersized panel. Let's take a look at some of what the noted prognosticators have said about this election day and what they expect to happen. We're looking now at five well-known prognosticators, beginning with Charlie Cook, who has the Cook Political Report. As you can see, he's predicting Democratic gains of 20 to 35 in the House, 4 to 6 in the Senate. Stuart Rothenberg is predicting even more, 30 to 36 in the House, 4 to 7 in the Senate. Bob Novak is much more conservative than either of them, 19 and 2. Michael Barone, our own Michael Barone, is at 18 and 3, and Larry Sabato of the University of Virginia, someone we all enjoy talking to, 27 gains in the House and 6 in the Senate, which means that all of them say that the House is likely to be gone to the Democrats. Of course, this is all this morning. These are not some kind of fresh prognostications, but there they are. So, what to make of these, and where do you all come out in relation to them? Juan?
Well, if you look at what the Fox News poll came up with, it said basically
This is the new poll that came out today. It was taken today.
Taken today by Fox. What you see is it says 5 of the 11 races, Democrats appear in strong position. But
this is in the Senate.
Right. No. This is in House races.
Okay.
But so let's extrapolate. Let's enlarge. Really, what they're saying is Republicans would hold on to about 3 of these 11 seats. So you go up to about that really hotly contested. I would say there are many more than what they say here. 11 hotly contested.
That's 8.
Yeah. So so that's about 24. If you go 3 times, maybe 4 times, you could get up to 32. That's the universe we're looking at based on what this Fox News poll is telling us.
But even if you only stayed within that universe of 11, you're looking at it by
8 to 3.
A net gain of 8. So
correct.
Just right there, they're halfway home on that.
And that's why I say from the larger universe.
Right. Mort?
Yeah, Charlie Cook and Stu Rothenberg, both of whom I know quite well, have been saying all year long that this was a big wave election, akin to 1994, that they saw all the tea leaves, falling down that way, and so they've come up with these big predictions, which Larry Sabato has finally, come around to in the end. It begins.
Big wave is by historic standards is not 27 or even 35.
Well, it's the average since World War II is 31.5 and 8. So this is relatively in a 6th-year election. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Charlie Cook didn't make a prediction. He said 20 to 35. He punted, basically. No, I think right now, what little we know from exit polling today, what we can make out of it, Larry Sabato seems pretty close. 27 losses in the House for Republicans and 6 in the Senate.
I said Friday night on weeklystandard.com, 40 seats in the House and 7 in the Senate, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, Bill Kristol, Fred Barnes, Mort Kondracki, Juan Williams. We'll be back with all of you in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Entertainment Weekly asks, has this man made the funniest movie ever? Yes. The most talked about news story is now the most anticipated movie of the year.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not used to that, but that's fine.
Borat, rated R, now playing only in theaters.
If you purchased or refinanced your home a couple of years ago and you got one of those adjustable teaser rates to qualify, just call or log on to ditech.com and refinance to a low fixed rate. Log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED.
It's really not so surprising that people can't always eat right. They just have too much on their plate to think about what they should put on their plate. That's why there's delicious Ensure, a source of complete balanced nutrition with protein, 24 vitamins and minerals. Have a great tasting shake at breakfast or lunch, or as a pick-me-up anytime. So when you can't eat right, eat smart. Drink Ensure. Nutrition for a healthier you.
If we take my Milan, you can just plug that right in.
Cool. Do you have directions to the meeting?
Yeah, they're right here. Mercury Milan has all the right stuff and the right size.
This is a lot cooler than our boss's car.
Don't tell her that.
Now lease the 2007 Mercury Milan for just $238 a month and click on mercuryvehicles.com for more reasons why.
You've got to put Mercury on your list.
As a growing business, you don't always get the attention you really need. That's where the principal can help. From banking to health plans to retirement solutions, we have lots of ways to help a not-so-big business rise above the crowd. The Principal Financial Group will give you an edge.
All right, we're back with our panel. We're coming up on the 7 o'clock hour. Polls will close in a number of states at 7 o'clock, and we're going to be in a position to call some races. And before we do that, though, let's have another round here with our Fox News panel here and discuss what we're seeing as we look ahead tonight and what we're looking for. Bill, what do you if you were looking for something to turn out differently than everybody expects? What would you see? How could it possibly happen, if it could?
Well, it could be really a big Democratic wave. You could get up to 50 seats. I don't think that's totally out of the question. Right. And you could have states like Megan mentioned earlier, the Florida governor's race. Right. Charlie Crist, who is Jeb Bush's anointed successor, has been a favorite all along. That started to tighten late last week. If we have a Democratic victory or a dead-even race in Florida, in the Florida governor's race, that would be a real sign that things are going bad for the Republicans.
Fred, is there a scenario where things could go the other way?
Well, there could. It could be, modest, middle 20s now. Look, here's what I would watch. I mean, the conventional wisdom has been, I think, mostly that Republicans would hold on to the Senate. I would say watch Missouri, Virginia, and Rhode Island, races where it's going to be close, and if Democrats win them, they'll win the Senate.
Well, there are a number of canaries in the mine that you can actually tell. I mean, right away, as soon as we get Indiana results, if Indiana 8, Mike Sodrell's race, if that goes to the Democrats, that would be a sign that things are really going Democratic. If Ann Northrop in Kentucky, that's another early state.
Yeah, that's Louisville and suburbs, right?
Right, exactly. And then Florida is at 7 o'clock, and if Clay Shaw goes and
Clay Shaw, Republican congressman from South Florida,
right, exactly,
in line to be chairman of the Ways and Means Committee.
Well,
right?
He's a competitor to be
chairman of the Ways and Means. One of those in line.
Yeah, right. And then there's an open seat which Mike Bilirakis vacated, and his son is trying to take over that seat. That is a strongly Republican seat. If that were to go Democratic, then you'd really know something was going.
We need to note one thing about tonight and the way we do things. Normally on an election night, we put together exit polling and we're able to make some calls based on exit polls in races that aren't particularly close. When we start to make calls in the closer races, what we look at are raw data from individual precincts in key places where our experts have said this is a swing district, the bellwether district, and so on. In the past, those individual precinct totals have been available as they're tabulated, as they finish tabulating them. Now there's another step in the process. They're going to be sent to a central counting house somewhere in many states where there's electronic voting. And when we get the totals, it's going to be statewide. It'll be all of it. But the piecemeal data that we've been able to make so many projections by will not be available to us until later tonight. So we could.
So high-tech modernity is better? I don't think so. It was better in the old days.
It may be, it may be more accurate in some broader sense, but it may delay things a little while, which I think the American people can well stand. Juan, your thoughts here before we go to a break here.
I'm going to be watching that Indiana district. I think three Indiana, where you have 3 Republican incumbents. If it swings the other way, that's a bellwether for the Democrats.
Okay, Juan Williams, Fred Barnes, Mort Kondracki, Bill Kristol, thank you very much. We'll all be here together all night having a good old time on election night. This is the stuff we live for around here. Thanks, panel. That's a special report for this time. We're coming up, though, on the 7 p.m. hour in the East. There are 6 states where polls will either have closed or will be closing, with 3 Senate races, 8 contested House races, and 3 governorship races that we will be able. So stay tuned, stay with us, and we'll be able to tell you something about each of those states right now.